everybody, welcome back to my coloring channel, What Colorful Worlds. In today's video, I wanted to talk a bit about oil pastels and how we can use them to create some beautiful sky effects. I plan on doing a simple, beautiful gradient sky, and I also want to have a bit more of a complex, dynamic sky that has a lot of clouds in it. And I'll be using only one technique for this, and that is the finger blending method. So how would one get about getting started doing this? I would say the first thing to do is to find yourself a good reference photo that can help you imagine what kind of a sky you want to create. So for myself, I found two reference photos, one for my simple gradient and one for my more complicated gradient. And these come from Sarah Renee Clark's color cubes. The first one is the Sarah Renee Clark's color cube number 209. I'll be using this one for my simple gradient sky because in the image itself, it has that beautiful simple gradient going from our purples down to our reds for this dramatic sunset. It's also very beautiful and has some uniqueness to it with those color combos that I want to explore. The second reference photo I chose for my more complicated dynamic sky is number 500 from her color cube. What I love about this one specifically is how it has a really nice sunset vibe with it, with the colors going from our reds to our blues, but it also has those wispy clouds, which I really want to have a hand at trying. Next, let's do a quick refresher on how you can do a good finger blending technique. Let's have a quick review of the finger blending method before we dive in. In fact, before that, let's take a step back and start with a quick swatch chart. By picking your colors ahead of time, having it matched to whatever your reference photo is, and putting them in the correct order can help you kind of visually see if the colors work well together or not. And they also help you determine what the color order is that you're going to put them down on a paper, especially if you're working towards a gradient blend. So here you can see that the colors that I'm using are from the Mungyo Oil Pastel set, and I am using the Prussian Blue, Ultramarine Blue, Violet, Lilac, Purple, Pink, Vermilion, and Scarlet. As you're creating your gradient blend, think in terms of pressure. You want it to be a darker pressure where it's only that color, and on the areas where you want it to blend into the other, that's actually where you're going to be lightening the pressure as well. So darker pressure for where the color is pure, lighter pressure for where you're layering it with another color. Once all of your color is down on the piece of paper, the next step is for the finger blending. Here, work from light to dark because it's really easy to muddy up the light colors. If you can. Sometimes if you come down to the end of a gradient or if you're doing it in sections, you'll only have the dark colors that are there. But even so, as much as you can, try to do the blending from light to dark. So here I am starting with the pinks and I am smushing it into the paper with my finger, moving into the purples. As you can see, I had a bit of color transfer over from the orange from the swatch sheet, but that's all right. It's easy to layer up and cover over. They're such thick, opaque colors. You can see that I'm also using kind of an up-down motion here because it's a really small area, but you want to try to get it to be a bit of a circular motion if possible, because that scrumbling motion, that circular motion is something that can really help make sure that you have a nice even distribution and make it look a bit less streaky. You tend to do the same with coloring pencils. For those of you who are coloring pencil colorists, you tend to color in small scrambling circles, not big long lines and streaks. Same concept applies here. So here's an example of me doing the same using a larger area. And so I am putting down my colors and I'm again moving from light to dark, and I'm trying to do a bit of a circular motion with it to ensure a bit more of an even and a smooth blend. All right, so now we have some blend practice and we have our colors set. We know the order that they're going to be in. Next step is to put pencil, or I guess crayon to paper, and put these directly into our coloring book. So with my color pencil laid down here, I'm working from my reference photo and I'm kind of going slowly from dark to light with putting the colors down. So beginning with that Prussian blue, I also decided to do it on both of the pages of the double page spread because I wanted to make sure that it was even and not done one side and then do another side and maybe there's something slightly different about it. Doing both at the same time is my recommendation there. So once my initial laydown goes down over everything, I then commence the blending. This is the first time I actually colored it, so I didn't really know that you should be doing it from light to dark. So instead I did it from dark to light. And if I had done it from light to dark, I think I could have preserved some of those lighter areas a bit better and have it be a bit less muddied. But it's all right because it was my first time doing it and I did not know that piece of advice until after when I was starting to research for this video. Something that's also interesting with oil pastels is that you can actually put acrylic paint on top. So I can add in my acrylic paint details with my white paint pen. I can add in my stars and my reflections on the water, and that helps add those extra elements too. Oil pastels in this experiment, I noticed, also are a bit erasable. So I had gone over into the foreground of my design a tiny bit and I wanted to erase it. So I was using my electric eraser and it is able to come off slightly, even though it really does dirty the eraser. So my advice for that is erase, erase, and then clean the eraser on a sheet of paper, erase, erase, clean the eraser on a sheet of paper. And that way any mistakes you did where it colored outside of the lines were pretty easily fixable. And there you have it. That is your first simple gradient sky. It was super quick for me to do, super easy, and I had this really vibrant, gorgeous effect very, very quickly. So next is going to be the harder of the two different ones, and that is how can you make a cloud effect using oil pastels. So to do so, I then had my second color cube pick, and that is the number 500. And so for this one, I wanted to also apply it to Kirby Roseanne's, and I chose to do these two ramps here, in part because I'm getting ready for Valentine's Day. I want to challenge myself to do 14 pictures in February that are themed around Valentine's Day. And if you saw my previous video, these two ramps here fall under that category because I always imagine them headbutting and fighting over a girl, and to me that felt like it applied to Valentine's Day as much as you can get with Kirby. I wanted to show you also my process of how I determine which crayons to use and how I kind of swatch it. It doesn't matter how dirty and messy your swatch card is, as long as you are able to have a piece of paper, which it's clean and it makes sense to you, go for it. And so I did all of my swatch experimentations on a very scrap piece of paper. And so not only did I try to pick the color cube colors that are the 6 main colors given on the cube, I wanted to look at the reference photo itself and see if there are any in-between colors, because having those transitional colors and values can be really, really helpful in ensuring neat and even blends. So I tested a bunch of them out. I held them up to the color cube. I experimented by looking at them next to each other. And I even did something called layering. Sometimes you're not going to have a color that you want. And my next tip and technique for you is that it's not hard to create a new color by layering several different colors on top of each other, and that blending process will mix them together and create a new color. That's exactly what I did for this corner color here, where I wanted it to have a bit of a darker tone without necessarily desaturating it by adding black. I found that it had a bit of a green tinge to it, and so I added in this dark green color, and that mix allowed me to find a color that was a close match to what I had in my reference photo. I also wanted it to be a bit lighter for the light areas, and the cream wasn't enough. But if you mix it with white, you're able to have a much brighter and lighter color as well. So color mixing can occur, and sometimes the color mixing occurs naturally too. The third color that I found in between is whenever that yellow of the sunset met the blue of the sky, a bit of a green color came out because yellow and blue make green. However, in the reference photo, you can see that there's also tinges of green there too for when the yellow and the blue meet, which shows that there can be some green in the sky sometimes. It's just a matter of keeping it into small little touches so it's not overpowering. And so that color blending and mixing happened as well. So in other words, it's okay if you don't have all the colors. Sometimes you can layer them to find the new colors, and sometimes colors are created naturally, the way that this green is created naturally both in the sky and also on the page that you want to create. So here you can see me putting my lay down of the different colors, and instead of having it be directly in these parallel layers the way you would with a gradient blend, I'm trying to make the shapes of the colors more dynamic and organic based on the reference photo that I have. And this is why having a reference photo can be so key, because it gives you a very, very strong visual to guide you, and it makes you feel a bit more confident as well that the kind of shapes that are occurring have some sense and logical bearing as well. So when you're doing something dynamic like this, I strongly suggest that you do so in small sections. So color in small sections. Over here, I'm beginning in the top left-hand corner because that is the one I'll smush the least. Considering I'm right-handed, you want to start in the corner opposite of your dominant hand. And I just slowly and surely followed the colors of my reference photo and was kind of blending and mixing them across. See, one of the ways that clouds effects can be created is definitely with that white oil pastel stick. And so after you do the initial lay down, again, layers, you're able to layer with oil pastels. And so what I did was I started adding in all of these different layers using white. I'd scribble the white on, I'd blend it out, scribble more on, blend it out, until it kind of reached more of like a cloudy consistency that I liked. So it looked cloudy, I guess. How else do you describe a cloud except cloudy? What helped with that, or my tip with that blending, is you want to leave the top edge of the cloud as white as possible and have more of the translucency towards the bottom of the cloud. And so that kind of allows for a bit more of an organic shape to form and has some white highlights kind of on the edge, like the top edges of it, while the bottom edges are sort of melting into the sky. And that creates a really, really nice effect. Another thing that I did was add in shadows using grays. So I first did a few using some of my lighter grays, and then I got daring and used some of my darker grays. Use them sparingly is my tip here. You don't want to go too dark too quickly with them. And so adding in some of those grays is a really nice way too of having some of that darker shadow at the under end of a cloud. And you know, this kind of does make sense if you think about it. Like, a cloud looks dark and gray if it's heavy and filled with water. And so wouldn't that be like heavy and at the lower end of the cloud versus the higher end of the cloud? I don't know. I don't do clouds. That's what I logically would think. I'm not sure. So for this particular page here, part of what I did too was when I was trying to create these wishes of smoke that were coming off of these round mountain mixes, what I did was I used my finger and blended them in the direction of the line work. And that kind of allowed for the blending to follow those lines. So even though for the most part you want to try to do a circular blending to make things even, you don't always want things to be even and flat. You want to have some of that dynamism and that movement. So color in the direction of the lines is what I kind of did there. So I want to end here with my final takeaways of this process and what are the key different tips I can give you so that you yourself can also be successful with this. Step number one, I would say have a reference photo. Not only will it give you a really nice sense of a color palette, and so you don't have to worry about coming up with colors on your own, you can follow the way in which the colors move with each other and are dynamic in the shape of the clouds if you're going to have clouds. And that really helps ensure that what you're doing makes logical sense and gives you a bit more confidence and more trust in the process to be able to do these kinds of colors. Along with that, use your reference photo to come up with a color palette ahead of time and practice some blending before you begin. So whether that is to make a quick thumbnail or to do a quick like gradient blend so you can get re-familiar with some of the techniques you want to use, I would suggest you do that too. And then while you're coloring, remember that you should try to work as much as you can from the light to the dark, and that you should try to blend in either circular motions if you want it to be nice and even, or blend in the direction of the shapes if you're trying to follow the colors and the movements and the shapes there. Remember, you can always add layers. And so if you're trying to build in clouds, you can always layer on top, add more white, blend it out, add more shadows, blend it out. And being able to play by adding in all of these layers is one of the ways in which you can create some really nice, beautiful blends. Remember to stop when it looks good though. Sometimes it can be easy to overblend and then the page looks a bit messy. And so you wanna stop when the going is good. Remember that there are some nice quick fixes that can happen as well. So if you go over an area that you want to stay white or have a different color, use your electric razor for that is a nice way of doing it. And remember that it is a media that could be used as mixed media, so you can use your acrylic paint pens on top of it. Just make sure you clean your nib really well before putting your paint pen away. And finally, just have fun, go experiment. I had so much fun learning to do these two different skies, and I am going to continue using oil pastels to create some nice, beautiful backgrounds. I'm very excited that I can now practice and learn some other cool background effects. If I figure any of them out, I'll be sure to share them with you. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it to the end of this video, happy coloring!